Chapter 96 Suicide of a General. Fan Xian led Fan Xijia out of the entrance of the bookstore and suddenly thought of something and turned back to say to Boss Yi very sincerely, "Please arrange for what was said the other day. I don't want too many people to know about it." Although Boss Yi did not understand why this young proprietor, why was he interested in those robbed people of Qing Yutang, he still nodded his head and answered, "These 17 big bosses of theirs, they had long gotten used to life in Kyoto over the years. Along with the various royal families doing their work, although they were unable to do their own business, their lives were still considered to be affluent." Fan Xijia curiously asked, "Big brother, what is the arrangement? Do you know what Qingyu Hall is?" "Of course I know. This Boss Yi was the one Fan Xijia had paid a big price to bring back, so of course he knew it well, and said in a relaxed and mesmerized manner, this was the bosses of the Yi family back in the day. So if I could be in business and have such a group of capable people under my hands, how great it would be." Fan Xian was stunned, more and more feel that he usually is not too careful. It seems that the Yi family, these two words have long become a yellow paper pile of old stories. People in Kyoto no longer see it as some kind of taboo. Getting into the carriage that had come to pick him up, and realizing that Ruo was also waiting in the carriage, Fan Xian chided himself, "If I had known you were coming, we should have come out earlier." Fan Xijia looked at his sister, fearful for no reason, and explained, "I just came to take a look. This business has nothing to do with me. Don't tell father." Hearing this, a smile spreads on Fan Ruo's otherwise indifferent face, saying, "We are all family, who would be happy to let you go to the board." Dongchuan Road changed from the hustle and bustle of the day to the tranquility of the moment. The fan house carriage clattered toward the eastern city of Kyoto, where the three young boys and girls in the carriage had their home. As the sun dipped in the west, the shadow of the carriage dragged on, sliding forward between the stone slabs on the street, bouncing upwards with the subtle undulations of the stone slabs, as if it wanted desperately to break away from the coolness of the stone slabs and plunge into the fiery red twilight. Or that old saying, Fan Xian felt that the current family life is still quite happy, happiness this kind of thing. Since the hand has already grasped a few silk hairs, it is necessary to clench a little more firmly. So for the assassination of his own thing, Sananbo Fan Jian confined to the official status, and cannot find out the real truth, so had to temporarily endure. Fan Xian, on the other hand, was currently a free agent, so he didn't have any scruples. In order to accomplish his three major goals after his rebirth, he couldn't accept that he was in an unsafe environment. That United Nations in his previous life had once said that people should have freedom from fear, and although Fan Xian didn't understand politics, he thought to himself that even if I wore it, I still had to have human rights, didn't I? Wang Qinian sat at the table with a gray head. This house was rented with the silver ticket given by Lord Fan before he left the capital. The location was very inconspicuous. No one should notice this place. Fan Xian hurriedly pushed the tea over and said, "Tough job." Seeing him use honorifics, Wang Qinian didn't dare to take them, and hurriedly reported on this mission. "As your honor expected, when Si Li and his party were returning to the capital, they encountered interceptors on the road. However, the hospital has been prepared, and defeated the enemy in one fell swoop. According to your excellency's orders, after coming out of Changzhou City, my subordinate has been following the courtyard's team, and those interceptors were disguised as horse thieves, but judging by their advance and retreat, they should be an army." Fan Xian was startled, thinking how the military was brought into this, and asked carefully, "Is it the state government army or something?" "Not very clear." Wang Qinian thought for a moment and added, "According to your lordship's order, the whole way was just tracking and trailing, and finally found that the leading colonel had fled to Wuzhou." "Wuzhou? Not bad. That night that colonel met with the Wuzhou senator." Wang Qinian suddenly thought that there are some things that must be accounted for and hurriedly said, "In fact, at that time, there was another person who was following along with my subordinate." "Who?" "Zong Chase." Fan Xian suddenly realized, "It's the Zongcho that you once said was on par with you back then. Didn't you say that he had been following Lord Chen?" He suddenly understood. It seemed that, like himself, the side of the supervisory court was also borrowing from Si Li to track down clues behind the scenes. "Yes. I saw President Chen's carriage from afar that day, and the Black Riders were there as well, otherwise it would have been impossible to fend off those cavalrymen who came anyway. Wang Qinian asked with some difficulty, Lord Fan, since the courtyard is already tracking it down, do we still need to continue? Well, let's not panic about this first. Which one of the dynasty's disciples is that senator in Wuzhou? The other party is very careful. That senator's surname is Fang Hu, not that he has any background, he's just a distant relative of General Fang of the City Patrol Department. Fan Xian frowned as he pondered, the City Patrol Division must have played a dishonorable role in this matter, just how should he dig back? Or rather, should one really dig back? If too many big names were involved, I'm afraid that it would be hard to end the matter, and he, who was originally publicized by the court as a positive and heroic figure, might have to go and be forced to play another role again. He took a deep breath, his lips a little white, and asked softly, when will Sariri arrive? Tomorrow. Wang Qinian glanced at him and suddenly spoke, Lord Dean is also returning to the capital tomorrow, Lord Fan, should we ask for orders to arrange Sariri after consulting the Dean first? Where is Lord Fei? Doesn't seem to be. Hearing that Fei Ti did not return to the capital, Fan Xian was slightly disappointed, but thinking that Chen Pingping would soon be returning to the capital, he was invigorated for no reason. The supervisory yuan was made by his own mother, although after so many years, people's hearts would always change. But the scene he saw when he was born in this world, and the careful teaching he received from Mr. Fei Jie later on, made Fan Xian very sure that the supervisory yuan was not an enemy or a friend, but one of his own people. At this time, he felt like a motherless child being bullied, suddenly came to a large group of uncle to help fight. The little guy wiped the dirty tears on his face, while thinking, fuck you mother, in the future this Kyoto, who still dare to bully the little master me? At this time, Wang Qinian suddenly laughed and said, congratulations to the adults. It seemed that even he, who had just returned to the capital, knew the news of Fan Xian's appointment to the position of conciliator of the Taishan Temple, only that most of the people did not know which one of the palace's members he would be marrying. Fan Xian smiled helplessly and said nothing. There was a saying that circulated in the official circles of Qing, there's nothing in the world that the inspectorate can't find out, even if it's the silver you've hidden in your night pot. Fan Xian also believed in this, and although his father's men hadn't found any traces, if there was anyone else in the world who could find out, it would be that person called Chen Pingping. For safety's sake, Fan Xian had asked Wang Qinian to stop his activities for the time being, only asking him to arrange for some manpower to follow every move in the courtyard. The entire official world reacted to Lord Chen's return to the capital. I heard that on the night of Lord Chen Pingping's return to the capital, he was summoned to the palace by His Majesty's urgent decree for a long night's talk before releasing Lord Chen, who was already a bit comatose in spirit, to return to his residence. Civilian and military officials are envious of Lord Chen in the heart of His Majesty's holy favor, but on the one hand, but also slander the boss earlier due to labor, return to old age. While the dean was in the palace, the action of the supervisory board was proceeding in an orderly manner. That night, a large team of the supervisory yuan officials, murderous broke into the City Patrol Division Yamen, began to carry out the work of the seizure. Another team of people is straight to the south of the city of the general's residence. On the high tree outside the general's residence, Fan Xian firmly grasped the branch with both hands, and the true qi in his body slowly flowed, silently hidden in the foliage, and his eyes coldly watched the chaos in the residence. It didn't take long for the operation to end. Disappointed-looking officials of the supervisory court retreated from the backyard, bringing a disappointing result. Seneschal Fang Darren of the City Patrol Department had committed suicide in fear of a crime, hanging from a beam just half an hour before the supervisory court arrived. Fan Xian sighed and waited for the crowd to disperse before slipping down from the tree. Walking above the quiet night streets, this matter was still on his mind. Fang Darren, as a military general, even if the collusion with the Northern Qi assassination thing is exposed and chose to kill himself, pull out the sword to cut his own throat seems to be more in line with the character of the martial arts people. Hanging beam and died of the death of the Palace of Grievances is too strong. I'm afraid that he was not willingly. Thoughts will not be able to press directly according to Wang Qinian left the address to find the past. Wang's family in the south of the city in an ordinary alley. Night big men are lying outside in the cool sipping tea, but the family's small daughter-in-law and the daughter-in-law are closed. Fan Xian unobtrusively traveled under the street edge, found the right place, and disappeared into the shadowy corners of the alley with a flash. Although Wang Qinian was a low-level official, he was after all a member of the supervisory yuan, and the reason why he had left his post a few days ago and appeared to be incredibly poor was because all of his savings had been used to buy this small courtyard. When Fan Xian tumbled into the courtyard, Wang Qinian was looking at his son with a loving face, holding a large bushel fan in one hand, and when he heard a strange movement, he turned his head with alertness, but saw the clean and beautiful face of Mr. Fan, and could not help but feel greatly surprised. "Hush!" Fan Xian gave him a gesture and silently followed him to a quiet place. Wang Qinian didn't expect that after he had just reported his duties to this young lord during the day, the other party would immediately come looking for him again, and asked with a face full of suspicion, "My lord, what's happened?" Fan Xian told him about the suicide of General Fong just now. Wang Qinian frowned and said, "The other party was really quick to strike. This is going to be a bit difficult." "Take me to the prison. I want to meet Si Lili," Fan Xian said. "The courtyard is investigating. If we intervene at this time, will it cause any misunderstandings?" Wang Qinian was much more thoughtful than Fan Xian. Fan Xian thought for a moment and said helplessly, "Lord Chen has been summoned to the palace, and I'm afraid there will be another accident in the prison." Wang Qinian thought to himself that he really had to get a grip, and respectfully said, "My lord, it's better for you to keep your hands off these things, and let my humble servant handle it." Fan Xian shook his head and said, "It's better to go together." To be honest, he had always been curious about the supervisory courts dungeon, and of course, he was also very curious about the girl from Si Lili. It was already nighttime in Kyoto, and in a large area of thick ink-like blackness, there were some bright lights dotted about, with the banks of the Lujing River being the most prevalent, and Tile Lane being the second most prevalent. The darkest place, however, was the supervisory court. That night, Wang Qinian led a mysterious person whose body was caged in a gray robe into the prison of the supervisory yuan.